This is The Quiet End, and tonight I'll tell you a story titled The Twitch. Let's begin. It began as harmless fun, or so everyone thought. The Twitch challenge swept across social media like wildfire. Its premise absurdly simple: stare into your webcam for hours without blinking. Influencers were the first to dive in, of course, their streams filled with exaggerated grimaces and forced giggles, turning eye strain into entertainment for their millions of viewers. But then, amidst the sea of smug YouTubers and TikTokers competing for the longest unblinking time, whispers began to emerge. It started with scattered comments on obscure forums. Posts claiming that if you watched long enough, if you lingered past the point your rational mind begged you to look away, you'd see it. A figure, not a face, not a person, just a trembling silhouette somewhere in the background, too blurred to name, but too distinct to ignore. Many laughed, calling it a glitch, a software hiccup with low-quality webcams. Others swore they'd seen it too, in streams from different creators, across different platforms. The figure always moved the same way, jerky, almost skeletal, the kind of twitch that didn't belong in human movement. Yet no one could confirm its existence beyond vague descriptions from strangers. By the time William's stream went viral, the figure was already a legend. But William had been one of the skeptics, and his challenge was supposed to prove it was all nonsense. His face was drained of emotion as he stared dead into the lens. His chat was alive with playful taunts and monetary bets on how long he'd last. Then, about an hour in, his viewers saw it. Not in the background this time, but reflected in his glasses. Half twitched, half frozen. It wasn't a glitch, and it wasn't alone. Riley was no stranger to bold challenges. In fact, they were her bread and butter. She had amassed a respectable following as an influencer, her fan base craving the next stunt, the next thrill she'd bring to their screens. Joining the Twitch challenge was almost too perfect, a way to prove both her endurance and her skepticism in one stream. Her audience surged that evening, eager to watch her unblinking session unfold. Some tuned in out of sheer curiosity, others for the drama, but a few were drawn in by something darker. For the first 2 hours, it was business as usual. Riley joked about the absurdity of the challenge, trading banter with her chat and claiming that eye drops were her secret weapon. She was confident, dismissive even, of the rumors that had begun to swirl around the challenge. Shadowy figure? Really, guys? Probably just someone's lame attempt to make this viral, she scoffed, flashing a toothless grin at the camera. Her chat was alive with laughing emojis and sarcastic remarks, as if daring the so-called twitching figure to show itself. But hours into the stream, the mood shifted. It started with fleeting details, barely perceptible flickers in the corners of her feed. "Anyone else seeing that?" typed one viewer, followed by a flood of similar comments. Riley glanced at her chat and rolled her eyes, saying it was probably reflections from her monitor or a camera artifact. Her casual dismissal did little to calm the growing unease. And then it happened, clearer than before. A shadow, thin and trembling, twitched into view for no more than a second in the lower corner of her screen. Riley froze slightly, but seconds later resumed her laughter. "Wow, you guys are so paranoid. Seriously, this has to be a prank," she said, her voice feigning humor, but her smile faltered briefly. Her chat continued to explode, half joking, half pleading for her to check behind her. Riley didn't flinch, calling her audience's panic entertaining. But as hours ticked by and the flashes of movement became impossible to ignore, even her most loyal viewers started to log off. The shadows weren't just in the corners anymore. They were moving closer. Riley wasn't alone. In the weeks following her unforgettable stream, stories began to surface from other participants of the Twitch challenge, stories that were disturbingly similar. The shadowy, jerking figure was not isolated to Riley's webcam feed. Streamers across platforms started reporting flickers of movement in their recordings, always lurking in the corners, just outside clarity. Some noticed it only when reviewing their footage, while others claimed it appeared live, right before their audiences. Not everyone reacted the same way. A handful of streamers stopped mid-broadcast, hastily cutting their feeds and going radio silent. Those viewers who did manage to catch the moments before the shutdown described strained voices and manic glances from the streamers, like they'd seen something off camera that they couldn't bear to face. Other influencers? They leaned in harder, seeing an opportunity in the challenge's eerie infamy. The fear surrounding the twitching figure added fuel to their streams, bringing unprecedented traffic. Entire channels were dedicated to hunting the shadow, dissecting sightings frame by frame, and challenging skeptics to join in. For Riley, the growing hysteria was an unrelenting pressure. She had gained thousands of new followers after her infamous stream, but the comments had shifted from enthusiastic to worried. Even her closest friends began messaging her privately, begging her to quit. "It's not worth it, Riley," one pleaded. "I've seen some of the other streams. The figure gets closer every time. It's not normal." Riley brushed them off, her pride fixed tightly to her rising platform. Giving up now seemed impossible. She told herself her audience expected her to push further, to conquer what others feared. But the desperation wasn't just for fame anymore. It was her need to rationalize what she had seen. Because no matter how many times she convinced herself it was a glitch or clever marketing, the flashes had started bleeding into her offline hours. Flickers in mirrors, twitching shapes in dim reflections, movements out of sync with the rest of the world. And yet, she went live again. Her webcam turned on, her audience waiting. Riley stared forward, ignoring the faint shadows writhing behind her. By the fourth consecutive day of streaming, Riley was barely recognizable. Her once bubbly confidence had eroded into a pale, twitching shell of itself. Her movements slower, her words strained. She hadn't slept, hadn't logged off for more than a few minutes between streams. Not because she wanted to, but because she felt compelled. Her energy drinks sat untouched, her camera fixed in place, broadcasting to thousands of anxious viewers who now watched not for entertainment, but for the crawling dread of what would happen next. The distorted scratching started that afternoon. At first, Riley thought it was her headset, a dying cable or a loose connection. She adjusted it with shaky hands, muttering something inaudible to her viewers. But the sound didn't stop. It grew, warping into a rhythmic, teeth-grinding frequency that set her on edge. "Can you guys hear that?" she asked with a hollow laugh, her voice carrying none of its usual enthusiasm. The chat exploded, confirming they couldn't hear it, some joking she was losing it. Her laughter stopped altogether. She yanked the headset off, but even without it, the sound lingered. Things unraveled quickly after that. The twitching figure, once elusive in her stream's edges, began appearing brazenly. First, its shape, narrow and grotesque, emerged clearly behind her chair, twitching as though struggling to hold form. Then the figure moved closer, its jerks almost rhythmic now. Riley always tried to laugh it off, call it a joke or some elaborate effect engineered by hackers, or so she said. But the fear in her eyes betrayed her. The viewers stopped joking. They begged her to shut it down, but Riley refused. "I have to see, it's just a bug, it's nothing," she muttered, her gaze darting wildly at her screen. After each stream ended, Riley claimed the figure followed her. She told no one at first, too afraid of what it meant, but the moments became harder to ignore. Shadows twitched in her hallway when she tried to sleep. Distorted outlines flickered across her mirrors. She started avoiding her reflection entirely, convinced she'd seen something moving beneath her own skin. Still, she streamed, desperate to prove it was all in her head, or to confront it for real. Whatever the answer was, her audience didn't know, but neither did Riley. It was nearing 3 a.m., the time when Riley's streams had taken on a disturbingly ritualistic feel. Her die-hard viewers were there, as always, eyes glued to their screens, despite the gnawing sense that something was deeply wrong. Riley looked worse than ever, her face pale, her movements sluggish, her eyes rimmed with a haunting emptiness. But tonight, there was no talking, no nervous laughter to fill the silence. She simply stared into her webcam, unmoving, like she had forgotten there was an audience at all. "Riley, you good?" The messages in her chat started to pile up, streams of worry scrolling through the feed as seconds turned into minutes. Some viewers wondered if she had fallen asleep, but those closer to their screens noticed her unblinking gaze. Her pupils seemed fixed on something beyond the camera, beyond them. It was unnervingly still, until, without warning, the stream cut to static. The scratchy noise burst through their headphones, louder than ever. At first, it was unbearable, the sound clawing at their ears like something trapped and desperate. But then faint whispers wove into the noise. Riley, the name carried through the static, layered and warped, repeated with chilling clarity by voices that didn't belong to her. Her viewers were frozen. No one dared close the stream, hypnotized as much by their fear as by their curiosity. The static continued for several minutes before dissolving abruptly, returning the feed to what appeared to be her room. But Riley wasn't there. Her chair sat empty, slightly askew, the room eerily still, except for the occasional flicker of her desk lamp. The scratching hadn't stopped. It had grown louder, punctuated by the whispers now swirling like a chorus from somewhere unseen. Panic consumed the chat as they begged for answers, but the stream went on, broadcasting Riley's absence as though she were never there to begin with. And in the corner of the webcam, the twitching figure reappeared, not fading this time, but lingering, watching, waiting. Riley's stream didn't end the night she disappeared. It kept broadcasting, as though something or someone had taken over. But what it showed bore no resemblance to the lively streams her audience had once adored. The feed became a twisted, otherworldly slideshow of horrors. Empty rooms, their walls stained with unnatural shadows, flickered in and out. Corridors stretched unnaturally long, dimly lit by erratic flickering lamps. And always there were the figures, those broken shapes twitching and contorting in the edges of the frame, lurking just beyond the reach of clarity. Riley's audience grew despite, or perhaps because of, the terror. The comments turned from panic to fascination, spectators unable to look away as the stream turned darker. Viewers began to report strange sensations after watching. Some described vivid nightmares, Riley's pale stare burning into their minds while shadowy figures crawled through their dreams. Others heard faint whispers in their homes, voices carrying Riley's name and their own. And yet, night after night, more joined. The Twitch challenge transformed into something more sinister, something unstoppable. Participants swarmed social media in numbers never seen before, hungry to test their courage, desperate for proof that the fears were exaggerated. But the seasoned skeptics lasted only minutes before abruptly ending their streams, visibly shaken or muttering incoherent statements into their microphones. Others, the thrill-seekers, stayed longer, sometimes too long. And for those who vanished midstream like Riley, just their empty chairs and looping static remained, their accounts broadcasting on their own for days after. Riley's feed became the epicenter of this chaos. Despite the disturbing images it displayed, no one could shut it down. Platforms tried pulling her channel offline, but each attempt only led to new streams popping up, copies with different usernames but identical content. Even her original viewers claimed they couldn't close the tab, the distorted imagery searing itself into their screens like it had grown roots. And, somewhere in that endless broadcast, the figure twitched alone in the shadows, waiting like it was hunting something no one could name, or someone. The Twitch challenge was no longer just an online trend, it had become a contagion. At first, the symptoms were subtle, easy to dismiss. A twitch of the fingers, an involuntary jerk of the neck. But for those who stayed with the challenge too long, it escalated quickly. They would mutter under their breaths, their words growing erratic, warped and unrecognizable, sounds that belonged to no known language. Their fixations became obsessive, their gazes locked onto webcams like they were staring into something none of the rest of the world could see. Authorities tried to intervene. Streamers exhibiting violent or uncontrollable behavior were quietly pulled from their homes, but there was reluctance to share what happened afterward. The media reported brief stories of institutions overrun with patients who stared for days, unblinking, into reflective surfaces while their bodies contorted into unnatural positions. Some even disappeared entirely, from their homes, their cells, as though fading between frames of their existence. The news warned people to stop participating, but the broadcasts only seemed to fuel curiosity. Streaming platforms struggled under the weight of it. Channel after channel sprang up overnight, videos nearly identical, participants, eerily pale and hollow-eyed, staring into webcams while faint twitching figures blurred in the backgrounds. When moderators tried to remove content, the system glitched, reposting distorted versions of the streams under new accounts. Entire sections of servers were overtaken by feeds broadcasting soundless images, empty rooms or grim, contorted shapes in unstable flickers that drew overwhelming viewership. People couldn't look away, even those who claimed they were just watching out of curiosity. And as numbers surged, so did something else, an unexplained compulsion. Viewers who had never posted a single video in their lives suddenly found themselves staring into their own webcams late at night, compelled to hit record. It was as if something had crossed from the streams into them, creeping, rooting somewhere deep inside. Everyone was watching now, but no one knew how to stop it. Riley's stream never stopped. Her channel, still live and hauntingly persistent, drew thousands more viewers each passing hour. The image on the feed no longer resembled what anyone had called reality. The room was darkened, the light reduced to faint pulses, barely enough to outline the horrors within. Dozens of figures surrounded her once vibrant chair, now empty and horribly skewed. Their twitching forms were chaotic, some jerking violently, others slowly trembling as they hovered unnaturally close to the webcam, their shapes inhuman and terribly unresolved. The scratching sound that had once gnawed at the edges of the broadcast reached its peak that night. It wasn't just noise anymore, it was a physical presence, digging into every device, vibrating through every viewer's screen like it had claws. Then the feed began to flicker, violently distorted, its images breaking into fractured shadows and pixelated horror. The figures twitched faster, almost convulsing, as the room seemed to close in around them. And then black. The screen cut to nothingness, the sound stopped, the world froze. But before anyone had time to even think about relief, a single message appeared across the feed, cold, sharp, and chilling in its clarity. Join us. Those who saw it first claimed their webcams turned on by themselves, small lights blinking to life, casting soft glows in rooms they hadn't entered for hours. Others, more desperate or possibly broken, clicked their stream buttons almost instinctively, unable to stop themselves from joining. Within minutes, hundreds of new live streams flooded the platforms, each staring into screens, each filling with whispers, shadows, and silence. The cycle spun faster now, spreading through every corner of the digital world like an unstoppable descent. Riley's chair remained in the static silence, surrounded by twitching figures who no longer felt distant. And somewhere between the screens, between the pixels, something watched, waiting. So tell me, dear listener, the next time your webcam flickers to life uninvited, will you be brave enough to stare back, or will you join the stream? Subscribe for more chilling tales and hit the bell to stay in the dark. See you at the next quiet end.